Welcome to Diaspora, the show where we share the remarkable stories of immigrants from the Indian subcontinent. I'm your host, Aditya Mehta. Each week, we sit down with individuals who have made the journey and explore their experiences, their challenges, their triumphs, and their unique perspectives on adapting to a new culture while keeping their roots intact. Today, we are joined by Shashank Mehta, an entrepreneur, a thought leader in the clean technology space, and a mentor to numerous startups. Originally from Delhi in India, which is the capital, Shashank moved to Dubai first in the UAE after a long stint where he recently moved to Canada with his wife and son. In Canada, he landed first in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, because why not? And now is in Sudbury, Ontario. If you haven't heard of either of these places, well, can't blame you for that. He now works for NORCAT, a mining technology company, and also serves as the executive director of the Ontario Clean Technology Industry Association. Just like I remember has his finger in many things, he's also a super connector and one of the very few people who I openly admit is better networked than I am. I know Shashank from my days at the London Business School, so about 11 years now. We were part of the same stream based in Dubai, and while he lived there, I would go in for a week every month to attend class. And I especially remember how much effort Shashank took to spend time with those visiting and show them around and generally be a good host and a good resource. But more on that later. So now let's dive into this week's conversation. Shashank, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Thanks a lot, Addy, for having me on the show. Really excited for the next 1 hour when we chat about my experiences and obviously common experiences as well,
Yeah,
as I've known you for quite some time. So, yeah, excited to be here.
awesome. So let's start right from the start. When you were growing up in Delhi, what was your childhood like? I guess we grew up around the same time in the 90s. And what prompted the move first to Dubai?
So, yeah, growing up in Delhi was, I would say, it was the time where you were either focused on going at particular stream. So I chose engineering. I had done my schooling with Delhi public school, and it was those times where I would say there was less of distraction and more focus. And then I went on to do my civil engineering from Chandigarh, and it was I still remember that when the companies came for placements and I sat down for a company called Lang Uruk, they asked me like, why should we choose you? And at that point in time, my parents were in London and my brother was in Germany. And I said like, what would I do in India? Take like I would. We are already a global family, and obviously this was on a light-hearted note. But yeah, I got a break into Langarook, which was into construction of mega structures. And as a civil engineer, it was a dream come true. I started my career on Atlantis, which is a mega structure on a man-made
Yeah,
island called Palm Jumeirah in Dubai.
yep,
So that's what prompted me to move to Dubai straight out of my college.
that makes sense. To provide some context to our visitors, Chandigarh is to Delhi, I guess what Boston is to New York. Smaller city, much more rivalry. Both think they're better than the other. So it's also one of India's biggest planned cities. When the state of Punjab was split into Haryana and Punjab, and it's the common capital. So it's one of those few cities in India which is grid pattern, very well planned. Okay, so you got to Dubai. Did you know a lot of people in Dubai when you arrived?
Absolutely not. As I was just a fresh graduate, the only I would say common belonging was the graduate training batch. So we were a bunch of six engineers recruited
Yeah.
from different places, and yeah, those were my family for like I would say they are still my family, but yeah, for the initial few years they were my family.
And what year was this again that you reached Dubai?
Yeah, this was I still remember the date. It was 22nd July 2006. So
Yeah.
yeah, quite some
So,
time back.
so I've been going to Dubai since the mid 90s, I would say. Probably been there 30 something times. If you live in Bombay, it's not too far. It's a 2.5 hour flight. So a lot of people go there for the weekends and whatnot. So at this time, Dubai was in maximum boom mode, right? Everything was going crazy. People were moving there, lots of construction, right?
Oh yeah, this was right across the time when the rulers have laid out the vision to make mega structures. So
Yeah.
they were making the big terminal 3 at Dubai,
Yeah.
and they were making like Palm Jumeirah. I've seen getting made in front of me, and yeah, they were on that path of build, and they would come. That whole thesis, that
Oh yeah,
build.
I remember that statement. Nice. Because you sure knew a lot of people in Dubai when I first met you. So I think you used those 8 years well. What was it like when the crash came a couple of years later?
So it was so yeah. My Dubai journey started in 2006. In 2008, I would say 7 8, I got intrigued with entrepreneurship, so I took a summer camp in Stanford,
Mm-hmm.
and this was that point in time entrepreneurship was still very new. So when there was the Lehman crash came, and most of the Dubai thought they were insulated, but then the world is flat, and that was proven that time. My boss that point in time said, "Hey, on I can." They used to call me Sean, just to for the convenience sake. So he said, "Hey, Sean, in this point in time, I can make you survive, but you cannot thrive." And the entrepreneurship bug was already in me, and I thought like the opportunity cost is pretty low, so why not go and do a venture. So a friend of mine who was in London, Cambridge alumni, he said, let's do a startup in climate tech, and let's try to
Yep.
see what we can do for carbon emissions. And we started Climate Connect back in 2010. So I moved back to Delhi and started the operations in India, and he managed the operations in London.
Oh, so you moved to Dubai and then moved back to Delhi and then moved back to Dubai. Is that right?
Yeah, so I ran this startup for almost 4.5 years, and I was again frequent visitors. I remained in touch with Dubai, uh,
Right.
and yes, I moved back to. I mean, I would say in 2014, about the time when I started my MBA.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So what made you do the MBA in the first place?
That's a very interesting question. So I had almost seen a startup cycle. I had almost done every role in that startup as a founder, and I thought like, okay, now what's there to be done? And I was always conflicted whether I should be doing a regular MBA or an executive MBA. I chose executive MBA purely because of the peer group, because I was looking for the cohort that can add value, and or probably the outliers who can tell not X is not equal to Y.
Yeah.
It's not a straight line curve. So yeah, that prompted me to do an MBA just to enhance my or solidify my business fundamentals, and also
Yeah.
I would say enhance networking opportunities and look for the next venture.
Sure. I always feel I should be the stupidest guy in the room, and the executive MBA definitely was. It's felt like that at many times looking at everybody's experience around me. I think you and I were the youngest and second youngest
Yeah.
people in the class. So I
Yeah.
definitely think I got a ton out of it, out of that program. For me, the timing, I'm a big believer in the universe conspiring to get you what you want when the time is right. I applied and I took the GMAT and I got in all in a span of 21 days. And it's like my Canada PR, which took, just the 3 weeks. So, and I'm glad I did it because I met you and some really phenomenal people there. How was the 2 years of the MBA? And I want to focus especially on one thing, which is when people visited, you were such a great host. You showed them around, you organized some fun activities for everybody. So, what part of you makes you want to do that? And is it like that with all your peer groups, or was the MBA a little bit special in that regard?
Well, I've been told that I've been a great host, and perhaps that's why I got an award from LBS towards the
Yeah,
graduation. But
I remember
uh,
that.
I, yeah, but then I think the major contributing factor I would say is that I was still single around that time, and I
Yeah,
love to party
yeah,
and socialize.
yeah,
And as I said, like I it was already 8 years into Dubai, and I knew as a single, I knew every street of Dubai. So I thought like, why not show some knowledge and kind of, I would say, flex. So
yeah,
I was kind of the go-to person when anybody wanted anywhere.
for
So
sure.
So yeah, and then yeah, I'm a people's person, so I love being around people. So that was one of the driving factors. And yeah, as I said, the cohort was great. I think it was one of the OG cohort where we were like I don't know, we were kind of skewed when it comes to like 52 guys and three
Yeah,
females. So
yeah,
yeah, so it was kind of a group thing, and it 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 really worked for I mean worked in our favor.
yeah. I definitely agree. Speaking of shared memories, is there any point that stands out during that 2 year journey for you? Any social event or any class or any other interaction with anyone?
There, I think the number of instances are so many that I can't even, you know, pinpoint to one.
Yeah,
But I would say because of the class composition, our like we used to hang out and pretty late. And I would say one great memory was that I because I did my engineering in Punjab. I thought I'm a I'm a great drinker, but then I encountered friends from let's say Central Asia,
yeah,
Russia, and Georgia, Azerbaijan,
yeah,
and I would say they just I was bold flat out. And
yeah,
when I say flat out, I actually was not. I couldn't stand on my feet once I got into that challenge, drinking challenge, and I
yeah,
just couldn't chug at their speed,
yeah.
and I had to miss two like next 2 days of classes, whereas they were like
Oh no.
right there. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah, so that
yeah.
was incredible.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just all those things are coming back to me as well. I think for me the one of the highlights would be that yacht party that we had sponsored by the London Business School. And you're sitting there and you're looking at Dubai Marina, you're with all these amazing people and it's one of those moments where you think like, life is great. And I really have no complaints, no regrets. Everything is fantastic. So okay, so you got done with the MBA. We have people who after the MBA switched careers. Some switched locations, some switched industries. I was one of the few who eventually switched all of those things. What aspects changed for you after the MBA, both from your marketability as an entrepreneur or as a professional, and as well as in your mindset?
I guess MBA, what it actually did to my mindset was that everything and anything is possible,
Yeah,
because it's like you are average of those five people around you, and I think
absolutely.
that put me at a very high average. But yeah, it was a great learning curve. I was fortunate enough that people recognized my potential. And in fact, few of my cohort, they actually off so I had three job offers after my
Wow.
MBA, and all through my cohort, because eventually they were the decision makers.
Yeah,
And I chose one of the offers and went on to join a venture capital firm under a family office.
yeah. And just to give some more context, that's all the more exceptional because in the executive program, there is no academic like recruitment cycle as there is with the MBA. So you don't have all these companies coming to campus and doing presentations. The onus is really on you. So in that context, when you're having three jobs offers is pretty amazing. How long did you stay in Dubai after the MBA was over?
So yeah, I mean, this was phase two of Dubai. So
Yeah.
I was there up till I would say April of 2023. and uh,
Oh wow.
and between that I had actually done two jobs. One was about working with Uber and Tesla and looking at electric vehicles on
Mm-hmm.
ride sharing apps, and this is way back 2017 when Tesla was not that
Yeah.
huge as it is now. And then I got into a venture where I was installing, I would say, EV charging infrastructure in Abu Dhabi,
Yeah.
and that was pretty interesting. So yeah, I was involved in these two ventures. I would say had a role like a entrepreneur in residence, where looking at everything and anything to
I
make the
think that's
business
the
success.
pretty much the perfect role for you. When we come back, we're going to talk about Shashank's efforts to move to Canada with the permanent resident program. But before that, if you haven't been to Dubai, you really, really must go once in your lifetime. It's like Las Vegas without the casinos, and it's everything. The whole world is there. You can have so much fun, family fun, fun with friends, and it's a multicultural and globally connected and just amazing place. Living there is not for everyone, I would say, but definitely visit. So, on that note, we will be back in no time. Welcome back. We are talking to Shashank Mehta, an entrepreneur, a clean technology leader, and my dear friend. So, Shashank, at, at some point after the MBA, I know you started looking at Canada. I think you probably started looking before I did. How was that whole experience? Because I know you faced a lot of roadblocks. And before that, what made you want to move there in the first place? And then how was that? How did that whole thing pan out? And how was the experience?
Yeah, so I would say how Canada happened to me was first and foremost, I was in this space, electric vehicles,
Yeah.
and at that point in time, it was really getting a great push. I would say there were policy intervention in the US and Canada where you were incentivized to own a Tesla, whereas what was the unique part of Tesla in UAE was purely that it can do 0 to 100 in 2 seconds. So
Right.
different perspective altogether.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, if I have to make a career in clean tech, I need to be a place where there are policy interventions and the landscape is pro, I would say, net zero. And amongst our group of friends, close friends, I think out of 8 families, around 7 applied. So it was like one applied and it was kind of a herd mentality. Let's all
Yeah.
go together. So yes, that prompted to apply for Canada. And my sister-in-law was already a PR at that point in time. So that
Mm-hmm.
was so I got married in 2017 and right after the MBA,
Yeah.
and that's where the trajectory towards Canada kind of became more serious because I
Yeah.
already had a family member.
That makes sense. Bonus points as well on the application, right?
For sure.
Okay. So usually, for those who don't know, the process is that you take this assessment and they assign you a number of points, and the higher the points, the quicker you're gonna get invited to apply for permanent residency. At that point, you're only validating the things that prove the number of points are accurate. So if I said I have an MBA, I have to show proof. Then you get into this waiting pool, and once every 2 weeks or so, they would call out, the cutoff for this draw is 445 points. Anyone above that can apply. And as time has gone on, that cutoff has gone up because the competition has gone up. But what I think with you, was it that you didn't get into the draw quick enough, or was it that you got in but you had document issues? So where did it get stretched out the most?
Well, I would say a bit of I will go a bit of philosophical on this point where they say man proposes, God disposes. So
Yeah,
what happened is that we were in this process and
yeah,
got a good news that I'm going to become a father, and then
yeah,
because of that the whole application paused because like what the Canadian Immigration Authority want is you come as a family,
yeah.
and also because in midst of pregnancy there is travel restrictions and
Sure.
things related to that. So we thought like let's pause, and then as I said, COVID happened and that pause kind of became pause for the whole world.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got approved in 2019 but eventually landed in 2022. So that
Right.
was a long pause because of,
Yeah.
I would say, factors beyond our control and
Sure.
some factors within our control.
So, once you get called for the draw, you have a certain amount of time to apply. And once you get approved, you have a certain amount of time to land. So those are all things that drive, maybe even source of stress actually. So I think it makes sense that when you had this big life moment happening, you would want to put a pause on it. Do you think the Canada PR, maybe a little bit of controversial question, is worth the same as it used to be in the 2017, 18, 19 time, or has it become more commoditized, or like less opportunities for coming to Canada right now? Or do you think it's still a pretty strong option?
I would say anything in this world has kind of followed a similar graph. If you say the penetration of internet and penetration of, let's say, social media. So when you say comparison of 2017 versus, let's say, 2025, I would say that follows a pattern of how many people are on internet and on social media and
Sure.
advent of TikTok and all. So I think because of that, the supply and demand got skewed and the law of economics kicked in.
Sure.
So earlier it was kind of, I would say, balanced. So, and as they taught us in MBA, the externality came into play, and there was this black swan event, which was COVID,
Yeah.
and it kind of increased the pile on, and everything got skewed. So I would say yes, there is a huge in the way immigration is happening right now, and purely because of people have more and more knowledge because of internet. And the second is because of that black swan event, there's a huge backlog, so demand and supply.
Yeah, and at the time of this show being aired, I think Canada has really scaled back its immigration numbers, and I think they're really turning the screws on that. And it seems like too many people have come in, and the infrastructure is not able to keep up, or there's not enough of those high quality jobs that people were expecting. Because in one of the previous episodes, I was talking to Juhi, and I said, did you have to do a survival job? And that's a term in Canada, is because you come in as say a banker or a marketer, but because there's not enough jobs of that type, you're doing a job to survive till you get the job that you actually want. So thankfully, my wife, or even Julie didn't have to do it, but I do feel for those who really did have to do it. So what were the first few days in Canada like? And I know that your wife and son went first, and then you wrapped up things and came later.
Yeah, we were on the same page. We said like let's stagger our entry to Canada purely
Yeah,
because one partner can figure out. So that's what happened. My partner Anamika, she moved first with my son Yugant,
yeah,
and she like kind of did she completed the circle for me. So came here, got all the documents, got the driving license, enrolled herself into a local college for supply chain program because the thesis was that supply chain will boom after
yeah,
COVID as a career. So
yeah.
she did a career shift, and I kind of came after 6 months and kind of followed her route. But for me, I would say that I came and took a pause because I fell in love with Canadian landscape and the beauty,
Sure.
and
Even though it was
I
Sudbury, Ontario, or Sault
it
Ste.
was it
Marie.
was Sioux. Yeah,
Yeah,
we call it Sioux for short because it's a small town, 75,000 people,
yeah,
and just bordering Michigan. There's a river dividing US and Canada. So first 2 months I was just sitting by the river and reflecting because it
yeah,
was like somewhere around April, May. Weather was nice, and
yeah.
I took a pause, and I would say, yeah, if I have to do it again, I'll do the same.
Great. So the move to Sioux was because Anamika's sister was
Yeah,
there,
because of
right?
we
So
had
that was a
family. Yeah,
base.
so we had family, and going by first principles, you just go to a
Sure.
place where you have someone known just as a comfort for
So
the initial comfort.
so to our listeners, now you know why that move makes sense, and that's a very strong and compelling reason to do that. Once you were kind of over the beauty, and I feel in some ways I'm still not after 7 years in North America. I keep telling my wife, look at the blue sky, look at the blue all the time. So then what was your thought process? Because I would assume that there's fewer opportunities in Northwest Ontario than there would be in a Vancouver or Toronto. So then what was your strategy from there on, especially with not wanting to do a survival job? Because how did you go about figuring out the next steps?
So when I landed, as I said, I just took a pause, and then I traveled coast to coast. I would say I from Montreal to Vancouver just to know where I need to be settling in. It's such a big country and
Yeah,
such a diverse, I would say, economy landscape. So yeah, I'd gone to Thunder Bay, I'd gone to Saskatoon in Saskatchewan, and of course gone to Vancouver. I so in Canada, what you see apart from the four major cities, which are Montreal, Calgary, Toronto, and Vancouver, all the cities have regional economies. So in the north, up in the north in Ontario, where you have 80% of the land and 20% of the population,
yeah,
major industry is mining or agriculture. So I thought, okay, let's see where we should go. and I got into a program which was sponsored by the government for the newcomers, and I went and actually learned certain skills which are relevant to mining,
Okay.
and that's how
Interesting.
I got my first job, where my first job was into mining and also helping the startup ecosystem.
Amazing.
And it is,
Yeah.
if I might just add, it's a system which is very new to me. In Ontario, there are regional clusters which focus on innovation, and I'm part of that cluster where I look after innovation, I would say, a startup ecosystem in the city or greater city of Sudbury right
Yeah.
now.
Makes sense. A lot of people they they follow family when moving to a new country, but in Canada, that's because the immigration is so new. Most people don't have family, and they end up moving to a place where all the other Indian immigrants live. So Surrey in Vancouver or Brampton in Ontario. Was there a large Indian or South Asian population where you were, and the ones that you did meet? How were your interactions like with them?
So I would say we were fortunate enough to meet a couple of, because how it works is law of attraction. Singles look for singles, couples look
Sure.
for couples, and people with like a kid look for
Yeah.
family with a kid. So Yugant was going in a daycare, and through that daycare, we met a family which was from India. Their son was also the same age. So that's how we kind of started, I would say, establishing a social circle. And I would say, again, we were always in touch with our folks back home and friends in
Right.
Dubai. But I would say when it comes to the Indian population, the Indian diaspora in North is far and few. And
Right.
after living in North for almost 2.5 years, I can confidently say that if you have to explore the real Canada, then
Yeah.
you have to drive 4 hours from GTA, because
Yeah.
that's where the real Canada is. And
Yeah.
you are in minority, and you see more and more generational, like, third generation, fourth generation Canadians
Yeah.
in this part of the world.
So, 3 points I want to make. One is if you think the US is a big country, you should check out Canada. We say Texas is a large state. British Columbia is twice the size of Texas. The second thing is most of Canada's population lives very close to the US border. So, the minute you go into a place like what Shashank described, it's the true wilderness and true great outdoors. In fact, 50% of Canada's population lives south of Seattle. And go look that up if you don't believe that. And the third thing is the law of attraction. You're so right because that changed for my wife when we went. We were a couple, then we had a child. So then that law of attraction changed. But for us, because there are so many Indian people in the greater Vancouver area, that you go one step beyond and then you also look for other families with kids, but who are also from Bombay. Because India is diverse, I may relate far more to somebody from the city. So in the park, whenever you would hear somebody speaking English in a Bombay accent, and that's a thing, we would get excited, say, "Oh, you're from Bombay. What part of the city?" And it goes there. But I do think we were also conscious, and I'm sure you will be, of not just having friends who are exactly like you, but also diversifying your network, diversifying your friend group, and getting the most out of what Canada has to offer as well, or the US has to offer. So, have you made any like really close friends in the past 2 or 3 years?
I would say to this point that I've observed that the colder the place, the warmer the people. So I'm in a place
Nice.
where it's like it touches almost -40 sometimes in harsh peak winters. But then when I joined my current entity, that's Knockout, I I mean, people gave so much warmth. Like in the first, I would say, first week itself, I had mittens for my kids. I had a homemade cake for my family,
Wow.
and yeah, and they helped me get my first car here and get me my first, I mean, my first home as a tenant. So there was a like ecosystem where they say like
Yeah.
they look up to your needs, and people are like very social. I observed this huge contrast when I visited Toronto for the first time, and believe me, first it was number of honks. Second, nobody saying hi to each other,
Yeah.
because in Sioux you walk by the park, everyone say, "Hey, how you doing? hey, hi, and
Yeah,
then whole you get to hear more colloquial Canadian English in the north. Like the
sure.
I was wearing a T-shirt which says Canada A, and I never got the context till I came to north where
Right.
people say great weather A. So this is like
Yeah,
more a true immersion into the Canadian culture. I I mean, I was invited to Poketa bingo parties. I was invited to ice hockey games, which people swear by. You know, everything
yeah,
is either Blue Jays or Maple Leaf. So yeah,
yeah.
got a full immersion and I was able to compare and contrast. And because I was coming from Dubai, I loved staying in a small city. That's what I craved for, is
Right.
to reset myself and also to appreciate, and also to have that bonding with the family, because in a smaller place distance are far less, everything is 5 to 10 minutes, so there's more family time.
It's that's very heartwarming to hear that everyone was so warm. And I'm stealing that statement, by the way. Colder the place, warmer the people. I think Canadians are not just nice. I mean, it's there's Canadian nice. Like it's a different level of nice. And even we were struck by that in our early days because a few weeks ago I was on our producer JD's podcast, Staying Power, and he was saying, what was one of the things you found weird about the US when you landed here first? And I landed as a 17-year-old, never having lived outside of Bombay. And I was like, what's with all this small talk? And now, when I've lived in Canada, I've lived here, I I got used to it, and I notice it and I miss it right away if it's not there. And not only did I pick up the slight aboutes and the A's, but I say A when I'm speaking other languages now. And my wife is like, "How are you mixing Gujarati with A? Like, how does that even happen?" So it does grow on you, and the niceness of people absolutely grows on you. So, on that note, we are going to pause here. And when we return, we will talk about Shashank's plans for what comes next and also what advice he has for other new immigrants who are following in his footsteps. Welcome back. We are talking to Shashank Mehta, an entrepreneur and my dear friend and my colleague from the London Business School. Shashank, before we go into more serious stuff, I want to talk about the last name Mehta. So, you and I share the same last name, but to give more context to our listeners, Mehta is an occupational last name, like a baker or smith. And by the last name, you can usually tell that people are from one of two states in India, Punjab up north or Gujarat in the west. So the first time I met Shashank at London Business School, I asked him, hey, which Mehta are you, from Punjab or Gujarat? And he said, I'm from Punjab. So most Indian last names have some deep meaning, and you can use that to either form positive associations like, oh, you're a Mehta, you must be good with numbers, or unfortunately also to discriminate. And Seattle is the only city in the US where caste and therefore last name is a protected class. So in fair housing, you cannot discriminate against someone because of their caste. So I just wanted to share that anecdote. So Shashank, now you're doing these couple of things, and what's your plan for the next, say, 5 years? Do you intend to stay put where you are and grow within that ecosystem, or is there a plan on the cards to go to a bigger city like Toronto or Vancouver?
So I would say, I mean, to that point, Warren Buffett still stays in Omaha. So if
Yeah,
I'm, correct me if I'm wrong. But so
he
it's
does.
like the big city and the small city. If you got ideas, I mean, you're just like all you need is a laptop. And just to go back and talk about the title Mehta.
Yeah.
So my great great grandfather actually did a generation tree, and he went 14 generations back. So
Wow.
the origin of Mehta is with a title in there was a court of Akbar, the great King Akbar.
Yeah.
So one of the title was Mehtab, and
All
that's
right.
how it was translated. And then during that point in time there was a huge drought in Gujarat, and the courtier was asked to go and settle the community there, and that's why there's a community
Wow.
in Gujarat with the title Mehta as well.
Yeah.
And again, it's he actually wrote postcards, I think, thousands of them, to get to the family tree. and
Yeah.
and yeah, and that's how I know it, the whole origin about the
That's
title
amazing.
Mehta.
And I'm
Yeah,
surprised that in all the years we know each other, we've never talked about this. But hey, you learn something new every day. So, I mean, right now it kind of means accountant, right? It's kind of the class of people
Mehta.
who have,
Yeah,
yeah, who have always been accountants. But that's fantastic. Great to know. Yeah. So I
yeah.
get I get what you're saying about, the small town versus big place. For me, I always feed off of the energy of the bigger places, and I think that's the only difference. But you're absolutely right that now it matters less than it used to that you're in a small town, as long as you have a laptop and you can connect to various things. So I guess we're gonna have to make a trip out there sometime, and you're not moving to Vancouver like I tried to convince you when when you were in this part of the country. Cool. That's good to know. What's it like for your child, if you're comfortable talking about that? Born in Dubai, may have a little bit of memories from Dubai, I guess, but now staying in a place which is what I would guess is the opposite of Dubai. And how has he taken to that environment, and does he enjoy it, or does he find it's too cold, or what are your thoughts on that?
yeah. So I would say that kids adopt the fastest, and you are always worried
Sure.
whether kids are able to will be able to adjust when we move to a new place. You're just making an excuse for yourself because they are the
Sure.
ones, they have a short term memory, and this like they said, oh yeah, let's go with it, and all they need is a play center, a good place for ice creams,
Yeah.
and yeah, and a drive through McDonald's. So it's us as adults who are attached to things, whereas kids are like, at least to a certain age, they are like purist in it, if I may use the word.
Yeah.
And coming to your point of moving to a big city, I mean, I'm still contemplating. If the opportunity is good, I would definitely make the move, but it comes with the trade off that most of the people in even in GTA, what I observe, they live in the suburbs and commute to the downtowns, and
Yeah.
especially now with a lot of companies asking employees to come into the office. So it's like 1 hour commute one way, which is like kind of, you're, I know you're listening to the podcast or catching up on your sleep, but that 1 hour, or if you say the whole day, 2 hours, it's taken away from your family time. And
Sure.
I think uh, people ask me why you came to Canada. I would say it's purely because to first spend more time with family, and second was to enjoy the nature. And most of the, I would say, GTA or downtown is more like a concrete jungle, which I
Sure.
actually experienced in Dubai. And I know Vancouver is a postcard city, it's totally different. But yeah, talking about Ontario for now.
Yeah.
And so I would say never say never. And when the time is right, I'll probably take a move. But right now, enjoying the place and kind of, absorbing the the local delicacies and the local, I would say, traditions.
Yeah. That's I think that's a great way to look about it. Do you plan to have any side hustles or any side things that going on along with these major things? Because you've always been a person like me who's curious, who's always looking at opportunities and things to do and things to learn. So is there anything that's on your plate right now or coming up on your agenda?
Yeah, I mean, I would compare myself like a duck where you are calm on the top, whereas you're always flapping beneath the surface.
Yeah.
So I would say that hustle thing would never die. I always look for, so I mentor a lot of startups, and because of that, I keep alive that whole spirit of, actually one fine day going and working for a startup or doing something of my own. So as I said, I am right now contemplating on certain ideas, and I would say, if we opportunity cost, so I think the time which is now coming, the opportunity cost would be low because of
Yeah.
the economic factors. So probably the right time to launch something. But
Right.
as I said, I've not stepped my foot on something, but again, keeping my eyes and ears open
Yeah.
and seeing how it, you know how the things evolve.
Sure. That makes sense. What advice do you have for someone who's relatively new in their immigration journey and has just landed in a place like Canada or US, and has really no idea how to go about getting assimilated and fast track their life in this part of the world?
So I would say, when people go on. I mean, I see, and I saw this one of the famous YouTubers say this quote, that when you ask someone that how it is to be done, that just means that you're being lazy, because there's so much information online,
Yeah.
and people are just not in that mindset to go figure. Because right now, as I said, the penetration of internet, and because of the social media, everything is available online.
Yeah.
And to my, like, coming to your question about what the advice I would give, I would say treat coming to Canada as taking an antibiotic pill. So
Okay.
it will be, you will feel, you'll lose the taste, or it'll get you out of the comfort zone, but
Yeah.
in the long run, it's good for you and good for your family. Canada teaches you patience, and
Sure.
it humbles you a lot. Because the first time I told someone that I did my MBA from London Business School, they said, "Oh, I never knew there's a business school in London, Ontario." I said,
Right.
"No, there is a London outside Canada as
Yeah.
well."
Yeah.
So there's a lot of bubbles within bubbles, and
Yeah.
if and you have to be patient, and you have to be very grounded, that you've come to a place where people not travel that much. Frankly speaking, I think
Yeah.
single digit of people own a passport. So, and
Yeah.
I've traveled like 40 countries, so
Yeah.
all my colleagues are always intrigued with the experiences I have, right from Cape Town to Georgia to, let's say, places like Kazakhstan.
Yeah.
So I've been fortunate enough. But so you have to be, once you know where they're coming from, everything becomes pretty, I would say, you are able to connect the dots. So be very
Right.
patient, be humble, and I would say you've come here to experience beyond career, right? If
Yeah.
you wanted career, you would have progressed far more in a place where you were. So
Yeah.
look for things beyond office, look for meaning beyond your 9 to 5. So it's like, people stick to a place if they love 9 to 5 or 5 to 9 life. So I
Right.
think Canada is more about exploring that 5 to 9,
Yeah.
which is evening to the morning. So, explore, because usually if you see in Asia, people are workaholic. Here, people stress on work life balance purely because there's no help to do things.
Yeah.
Everything is to be done to yourself. So again,
Hmm.
connecting the dots, why there's work life balance, because everything got to be done by you, and you are the one who is doing the grocery. You are the one. There's nothing like how it happens in Asia, where you have a local help to help
Right.
you. So I would say to a newcomer, always have a clear agenda. And if you're thinking it's for career growth, then I mean, think and pause. If you may be doing better in places you are, if
Yeah.
it's for the next generation, so I think then your career can take a backseat, and you enjoy more what is there beyond career, absorb that. And as I said, like, you were in Canada, now you're in US. So world is flat. So once you've you achieved what you wanted,
Yeah.
maybe, let's say your kid wants to go to a uni in Boston, you can move to Boston. It gives you that flexibility. So
Sure.
that's the thing I would say.
A couple of points I want to make here. One is that in earlier in the 1900s, the first generation immigrants who would come would make sacrifices which I don't think our generation fully understands. They would work their whole life so that their kids could have a better life and a head start. I think that time frame has really shortened in terms of how quickly you can get established. But on the point about the information on the internet, I think it's too much information almost sometimes that you get so confused and so overwhelmed. And that's one of the reasons I had started Diaspora in Canada, was to help people, that this is the information you need. Let's not overcomplicate things, but at the same time, this is the expectation setting that has to happen. So one more question before we go into our weekly segment is, would you, given the right circumstances, move back to India? And if so, what would those circumstances be?
Well, as I said, so I make make sure that I go to India every year. So I've
Yeah.
been twice already. I believe in the philosophy of being a global citizen. So, and I would say my roots would always be Indian,
Yeah.
and so would be for my whole family. But thing is, whether I keep India as a base, that's kind of counterintuitive to the whole philosophy. Like, it could
Right.
be anywhere. Like, my brother right now, he holds a German citizenship. but it's
Mm-hmm.
been in the UK for past 6 years.
Yeah.
And as I said, because we have global skills and because we have that will to move, I would say for the short term future, or even if I say next 5 years, or let's say next midterm, next 10 years, I don't see myself going back to India. But in a long term future, I would say yes, because as I said, going back to the roots, like how people here, Southern Ontario, and then retire in Northern Ontario where they're from, in
Yeah.
a retirement home. Probably by that
Yeah.
time, the concept of retirement home would be there in India, and I probably go to my roots. But
Right.
yeah, right now I would say I want to explore more of this part of the world. I want
Sure.
to travel. Latin America is big on my list. Want to also encourage my son to learn a different language, either French or Portuguese. But yeah,
Awesome. Great. So we're gonna move on to our weekly segment now. So can we have our wheel of fortune, please? So this one is called this or that. So I'm gonna give you two options. You pick one, and I'm gonna keep giving you more options after that. And
sure.
this the category is things we drink. So tea or coffee,
Coffee,
coffee or filter coffee,
coffee,
coffee or Tim Hortons,
coffee,
coffee or mango lassi.
coffee.
Okay, I'm gonna remove coffee as an option. Mango lassi or
Thumbs up,
thumbs up or fruity,
thumbs up,
and thumbs up or roux afza.
thumbs up.
Okay, so you're clearly a coffee and thumbs up guy. Great. So to give you more context, afza is a rose-based drink, and thumbs up is India's Coca-Cola, and then filter coffee is a South Indian version of coffee. And you can get all those here in Seattle or at an Indian store near you. So, well, that brings us to the end of today's episode and show. Thank you for listening to Diaspora. We hope you enjoyed hearing Shashank's awesome story and all his great analogies. Remember to check out our show notes for links and more information about the topics we talked about today. You can find Diaspora on all major podcast platforms and subscribe to our channel on YouTube. And if you like this episode, consider following us on Instagram or giving us a 5-star review. Diaspora is part of the Staying Powered network of shows and podcasts, all of which are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You can find the Staying Power network of shows wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back next week with another interesting story from the South Asian diaspora. Until then, take care and stay curious. Shashank, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Addy. And one final shout out to our alumni LBS, so wearing the I Love London Business School tee, and
Awesome.
devotion to my Canadians wearing a lumberjack shirt over shirt. So yeah, thanks a lot.
You got all that covered. Take care.